Season 2, Episode 9 of Elevated Businesses, where I have conversations with cannabis entrepreneurs. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Gregg Weiss. Gregg is the VP of Technology and Strategic Growth for Happy Valley, a vertically integrated Massachusetts cannabis company. Gregg has been involved in the cannabis industry since 2016 and has lived in Florida and Colorado. He previously started and sold a mobile app development company and has been involved in several startups over the years. So let's dive right into the conversation with Gregg. Well, Gregg, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really great to watch Happy Valley and just all of the growth that you all have had over the years. And before we dive into all of the fun stuff that you have going on, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in cannabis?
Sure. And thank you for having me. It's exciting to be part of the podcast in its infancy. Right now, my role at Happy Valley, I'm the VP of Technology and Strategic Growth. I've been with Happy Valley for almost 4 years. I was the second person hired, and we have almost 250 people in the company now. So true ground floor opportunity, and the cross section of what I've been doing for the last 20 years, which is involved in technology and cannabis, which I have a passion for, and as many people do who are in this industry, that's kind of what drives us to the industry. But how did I get started? Little bit of a long story, but I think we have time. I'll try and be as brief as I can. I spent about 13 years in South Florida. I started what started off as a web development company and morphed into an app development company when the iPhone and the App Store came out around 2007-ish. I did that for about 10 years. I sold that company in 2016-ish. And that was right when Amendment 2 was trying to get passed for medical in Florida. If you know anything about the history of Florida, the first go round got like 68% of the vote. They needed 70% to pass Amendment 2. 2 years later, Amendment 2 was passed. So when I sold my company, I was like, all right, I need to get into the cannabis industry, and just really took about a year to immerse myself in what was starting to happen in Florida with Amendment 2 and United for Care and John Morgan, and really just met a lot of people, educated myself. I've been a consumer for a very long time on the black market, but I didn't know about terpenes or cannabinoids or the endocannabinoid system or anything like that. So fast forward, Amendment 2 passed. I had to figure out what was I going to do within this industry. I ended up organizing a couple of educational symposiums, events for physicians, and formed a company called Canna Holdings and did a couple events in South Florida. And that's where I really got educated and started to meet a lot of really, really key people on the medical side. Dr. Sue Sicily is one really good friend who spoke at two of the events, Greg Gerdeman, Juan Sanchez Ramos. And really these events that I put on, there were a couple hundred physicians that attended, and those physicians each touched hundreds of patients. So, the whole pitch for these symposiums was, doctors, medical marijuana is coming. When somebody comes in with one of these debilitating conditions like, Crohn's disease or cancer, these physicians need to be able to answer and be educated. So that was how I kind of got into the industry. What I wanted to do was apply for a license and run a dispensary and raise money and do all that stuff. And then I quickly realized that Florida was the system of just how they doled out licenses and the need to have a nursery for 30 years and just some really crazy regulatory requirements that I wasn't cut out for that. Around the same time, I got involved in another company that was a startup that took me to Boulder, Colorado. And I worked for that company for a couple of years, startup, and had some money issues as a lot of startups do. And around that time, I was introduced to Michael Reardon, who's the CEO of Happy Valley, and did some consulting for him kind of on the side. And that was kind of how it was, just really networking. And I was introduced to him from a friend of a friend. And I commuted back and forth from Colorado to Massachusetts for, 2.5 years. And this was before the store was even open. Our cultivation facility was just a giant steel structure. We didn't have our second location even open or built out. So got in really early and wore 10 different hats, really just whatever needed to be done. I built a marketing department. I've since backed out of the marketing department. Now we have a 5-person department. And so now I'm really focused on, of course, all the technology is in addition to just really strategic growth and where are we going, where are we going to be in, new states in 2 years and 5 years and stuff like that. So, yeah, just really a lot of networking. And a lot of people ask me, how did you get into the business and how did you get into the industry? And really, that's what it comes down to. I see you at a bunch of shows pre-COVID, and you and I have had some really good exchanges and introductions and things like that. And that's really how you do it. I mean, and that's no different than any other industry you want to get into. You got to get out there. You got to meet people. You got to go to trade shows. You got to be open and friendly. And you can't always be, well, what is it going to be? What am I going to get out of it? Because you will get something out of it. Maybe not right at that moment. And that's kind of how I've lived my life, both personally and professionally.
Love it. It's all about relationships, and
Yeah.
especially in cannabis. I mean, we're not very trusting at times. We've been through the ringer. There's a lot of frauds in our industry. And
Yeah.
so, some of my best return on investment with services and products have all been through referrals and just that word of mouth. And it's just so important. And yeah, you touched on it a little bit on how we cross paths. And of course, you're in the cannabis technology world. I'm in the cannabis technology world. And I always love to geek out on just all of the innovative products that are being developed. And with that being said, I would love to know a little bit more about the challenges in your assessment process when you started Happy Valley and your entire tech stack and some of those things that you went through with like your point of sale, maybe your ERP, customer loyalty, things like that. So what were some of those challenges there?
Yeah. I mean, I spent the better part of, 6 to 8 months way before stores were opening and before the facility was even built, before we even planted a seed, vetting all of the different pieces of the puzzle in order to run a vertically integrated company. And just taking it on the retail side, because we're vertically integrated in the technology, right? To your point, you have loyalty, you have a point of sale, you have a menu system, you have a debit card system. And each one of those, gosh, there's probably 50 vendors for each. There really weren't that many 4 years ago, but there was still a good handful. And some of the challenges are really, you don't know what you don't know until you're operational. And that goes for metric, that goes for your menu, that goes for your e-com, right? You have this vision of how your point of sale is supposed to function, and you can only really, every salesperson gives a great demo, whether it's a menu system or any piece of software, and you go, yeah, that looks like it's got everything covered. All right, let me check the boxes. Is this company going to be around? Are they well funded? What's their leadership look like? Where are they located? How many people are in the company? Does the software, is it compliant? Is it integrated with metric? Of course it has to be. And what are the features? Well, in order for a point of sale, for example, to be in business, they've got to do all the basic features. And is it easy to use? Are bud tenders or your hosts and the people who aren't really great, sometimes computer savvy, are they going to be really easy to use, whether it's a touchscreen or an iPad or an iMac or a PC or whatnot? So when I say you don't know what you don't know is because up until the point you're operational for point of sale, all the demos look great. You don't really, you know what to ask, but then you're operational for a couple of weeks or a couple of months and you go, oh, does it support gift cards? And does it integrate with this loyalty? And what can we do? And there just becomes all of these things because now you know what you need. And in the beginning, and everybody is a startup, whether it's your software provider or your own company, we're a startup. So you can only really assume what you need until you go through the ringer and then you go, yeah, this is really what we need. So, we didn't start off with an ERP. We're on an ERP now.
Okay, smart.
We switched point of sale systems once. One company went down on 420, and that was just the final straw. So we switched to a better solution. We have switched menu systems, and we have switched loyalty providers within all of this within the last 2 years, year and a half, 2 years since we opened. And and it's funny because I swore to myself, I'm going to make the best decision. I'm never going to change point of sale or menu because it's just such a bear to do the switch, and you got to do it after hours, and you got to retrain people, and then you got to do all of your integrations again. So we have a lot of integrations. Your point of sale gets fed to your menu system. It gets fed to your e-com provider. For us is Dutchy. It gets fed to, we have our own mobile app. So it's not just like pulling out the plug and plugging one in or flipping this switch. There's a lot of these integrations that need to be tested when you switch a point of sale. So that wasn't fun, but it was necessary. It was kind of like a rip the Band-Aid off type of moment. And that's because as the industry evolves, there's new companies or even existing companies that go, oh, we need to do this better, or we can do it better, or we understand that Massachusetts has different regulations from a marketing perspective for medical versus recreational, and the things that you can say and things that you could, and every state is different. So it's a challenge for the software providers, but there's a reason why these other providers exist, because they're filling gaps that the existing startup providers either are too slow, or for whatever reason they're focused on a different state, or there's a number of reasons as to why. We joke around here a lot because for a year and a half, a lot of these software providers come back with, it's on the roadmap. All right, well, I have a technology background and I've been in the software development, so I understand what that means. But you're working with an account manager who's just going to the product manager, who's then telling her, we don't have a date, just tell them it's on the roadmap. You know, and then 3 months go by, we still on the roadmap? Yep, still don't have an answer. So it's like that part of it is frustrating. But the company that we're with now, which is Dutchy and LeafLogix combined, is, I think, in my opinion, from a e-com and point of sale perspective, infinitely better than a lot of the other ones out there that I vetted, and the one that we were on, whose name I shall not mention.
Yeah, thank you. And like LeafLogix, it's great because they have the vertical integration. they have all this funding. One of my really great friends, I used to work with her at a previous cannabis technology company as the product manager for the new point of sale under Dutchie / Leaflogics. And she cannot rave enough about that company and just how well they treat their employees and things like that. And you even said in your evaluation process, looking at their team, their leadership are really important attributes
Yeah.
that you look for in your solution. And really, you hit the nail on the head with you don't know what you don't know. I bring up this example sometimes where there's this one time I was doing an evaluation with a point of sale and I said, how do you purchase order this inventory in? And they're like, oh, this is how you add inventory. I'm like, that's not what I asked. I asked, how do you purchase order this in? Because I want to set up my purchase order, have it align with my invoice, with my shipment, and not have to add in each individual SKU or each individual batch or line item. And it's little nuances like that that's really hard in that evaluation process. And you said it took you 6 to 8 months to go through that initial evaluation?
Yeah, and that was I spoke with a dozen or more point of sale companies, a handful of menu companies, a handful of loyalty companies, a couple of debit merchant accounts, and just like debit alone. I mean, still to this day, I get people emailing me like, "Hey, we want to be your provider. We can do this. We can do that." And you could choose any company with the best story. I just read something about. I can't remember, but it was like when you get the flower shop. You know what? It was on LinkedIn. It was you probably saw it. Somebody had posted that they went and got a refund because their receipt said like flower shop on it or something, and
Yep.
and they got their money back from their bank. But really, was that the right thing to do? And I agree with the comments where people were saying you're really just hurting the industry by doing that. However,
Agreed.
there is a lot of onus on the provider to pick the right debit merchant account provider and do your own vetting and ask for referrals and ask the question, is it going to show up as my dispensary name on the receipt, which is the proper way to do it and the legit way, or is it going to show up by some random XYZ merchant because it's going from here to there to there to there to there so that it could be masked and hidden? And that's the wrong way to do it. So there is responsibility for our industry to vet these people and to not use those types of providers who are really trying to be illegitimate,
Yeah.
whether it's a cheaper
Yeah.
rate or faster or whatever the case may be, because it just hurts the industry as a whole when that stuff surfaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And payment systems as a whole is just so challenging. That's honestly an area I don't really tap into. Like my brain's
Yeah.
filled with other compliance
Right.
things that like payment systems. I'm just like, I don't have enough bandwidth for that. And on a previous episode, I interviewed a woman by the name Rose Elliott, who's the CEO of Complied. And her background, she used to work for PayPal. So she's like really in depth with like the payment systems, the compliance behind it and everything else. And that was one of the biggest things that she said around the payment system. She's like, point of sale is trying to implement payment systems into their point of sale and not use like a separate service. She's like, it's not a feature. Like that is a compliance risk. That is not something that you can just build into a point of sale and be 100% compliant with. And as we know, all of our challenges, you probably also saw about Visa releasing their statement about the retail transactions and the workaround with the ATM situation. So it's just, I mean, it comes down to lack of banking and having that infrastructure to actually be able to store our money somewhere compliantly and legally. And it's a huge challenge that we have to work through, and hopefully one day we will. But I actually want to back up a minute because you mentioned something in passing about developing your own mobile app. And I know previously that was an area of your previous company you worked on, but did you create a new mobile app for Happy Valley? Like, what is that and what purpose does it serve?
Yeah. So we were, I believe, one of the first with a mobile app in Massachusetts, quite possibly
Awesome.
on the East Coast for sure. And because of my experience in resources and building them, I didn't come to Happy Valley and then outsource to an agency, which basically would have been one of what my whole company was. And I immediately knew that there was value in that, from a functionality perspective, but also from a marketing perspective, to be able to push notifications to people that have the app, especially with all the SMS and the carriers and all the issues and the 10 DLC and all that stuff. And you totally skip that when you can send a marketing message to someone that has already opted in. They've chosen to download your app, and they have your brand and they have our key right on your phone. So that was the primary driver of it. And then what we did was we added some value add features. So one of the integrations we did with our point of sale, LeafLogix, was to pull in purchases. So you log in with your phone number and you can see all of your purchase history by day, what you bought, what it cost, etc. Pretty easy, simple thing to do. And that has some value because people shop around and they go, oh, or they come into Happy Valley again. What did I get, 2 weeks ago? Sometimes you forget, or you want a price comparison shop at other dispensaries. So that's one feature. We also have a link to our menu, to our e-com, Dutchie menu. So you can shop right in the app. We also have a feature called a journal, where it's a little bit of a chat interface where, again, an integration into LeafLogix. So it shows you all of your purchases. You tap on a product that you've purchased and it goes through this chat interface. How did you consume Super Lemon Haze, 3.5 grams? I smoked it, obviously. How many puffs did I take? You select a number. How did it make you feel? Red eye, happy, creative, and you just check. And then you can enter in like a comment if you want, and then it saves that journal entry so you can remember how you felt. We're actually in the process now of adding a new feature to that, so you can take a picture of your compliance label, and then you can see our compliance label. We print all of the top 3 terpenes on it, in addition to the cannabinoids that are required, so that you can remember. I really love this terpenoline because it was a fruity taste, and I love the way that it made me feel. So we're adding that. And, another really great benefit of building your own app so Apple, maybe about a year ago, said, oh, cannabis apps are okay now. as long as you can use the location services and you're in a legal state. So that opened up the door for other companies, loyalty companies, primarily, to integrate loyalty into their own white label app and then offer dispensaries, hey, you can have loyalty and you can have an app now and you can do push notifications. And that's what they call like a white label app. Your app is going to be the same as the other guy's app. The colors may change, the logo may change, but you're not going to get anything different than the other company until said company builds more features and they roll it out just like any other software company. So one of the advantages of building your own is that you're not confined to the box of the white label app and the functionality. So as an example, what we did, and actually the app just went live in the store today. Happy Valley, an update. It's been in the store, but this update that I'm going to talk about, we are the exclusive cannabis sponsor for Boston Calling, which is a 3-day music festival in Boston. Tons of bands, 2 stages. Cool. This was the first year that they opened up sponsorships to cannabis companies. So we're very proud and happy to be able to do that. We got a 20 by 20 activation space. It's going to be super cool. If anybody's listening, going to be in Boston this weekend, come see us. But one of the things we were able to do with the app is we built this scavenger hunt feature. So if you're within, I think it's 3-mile radius of Boston Calling, within the app, this little link in the navigation scavenger hunt will appear. You enter in your email to register and your name. And then every day there's a list of 20 things that you're supposed to hunt or find for. find. And basically you take a picture of what the thing was. You take a picture. They have like a giant iconic Ferris wheel. So you take a picture of that. Another one is like, find a cop and take a picture with them, or like do, find 5 people and do a human pyramid, just like real silly, fun things to do because it's an all-day festival and you take a picture, excuse me. And then each task is associated with a number of points. And then there's a leaderboard in the app, and then a leaderboard that we'll have on a big screen at our tent. And then every day we have different tiers of prizes where people can win some cool stuff. One of the grand prizes is a tour of our grow facility with our director of cultivation.
Awesome.
But we've got lots of cool prizes and fun things to do. So my point is, if we were to get a white label app, this great idea of a scavenger hunt for this festival that we're doing, we would have never been able to do it. So that's just really one of the advantages of building your own, if you can and you have the resources to do it, versus just getting a white label app. And the scavenger hunt for Boston Calling, we're actually doing another festival called the Levitate Festival in July, where we're also going to use the same scavenger hunt that we've already built, and there'll be different prizes and things like that. But we're able to repurpose that for another festival as well. So,
how awesome, how innovative. And I would imagine this app helps with customer loyalty, retention. Like, are you seeing that in the data?
We are. Hopefully people will download the app and play the scavenger hunt, and that'll be TBD. I'll let you know next week how it went. I've never been to Boston Calling, and I'm new to Massachusetts. But my understanding is that it's not just like you go and you see a band and you leave, and it's like experiential, and you do things, and there's some art installations and interactive things to do. So this fits right in with hey, this is something else that you could do to kind of keep busy if, you don't want to see the band and you've eaten and drank enough.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness, how fun. And I just love what you're doing with this app, like the journal, like to go back a little bit and talk about the features in your custom app that you've built. Like, having that journal is so important for consumer education, especially as we're starting to pivot away from these terms of indica and sativa and really talking about our effects and terpenes. I think here soon we're going to start be talking about flavonoids as well, and how that might impact your experience, and just putting that data and the power in the consumer's hands to be able to like truly understand the different effects of maybe how you consume, maybe the different type of product types, those different cultivars are all just so critically important for the consumers to really understand how cannabis can impact their bodies differently from person to person. So I'm really excited about that feature. I had no idea about the little journal. I think that's so powerful.
And we don't even put indica sativa hybrid on our menus or on Dutchy at all. People naturally come in and they want the highest THC, and they want to know, do I use it at night for sleep, or is it during the day? And we know that it's not about the highest THC. It's about the flavor and the freshness and the effect and the terpenes and the cannabinoids as a whole, not just I need 30% THC because I want to just bong hit my brains out. But that's really an industry education responsibility for every bud tender, every dispensary, every company to really get on board to move away from indica sativa and hybrid, and really educate our customers that these terpenes is the flavor, that's the experience, and they have effect too. So what terpene may affect you may affect me differently. But it may be the same THC content. So it's not all about THC. And I think just the more that we talk about it, and the more that we read about it, and the more that hosts and bud tenders talk about it. We'll slowly get there. But it's a challenge because that's how people shop.
Yeah. And it's a big learning curve. And like you've already like planted that seed of like, this is how I differentiate my cannabis. So trying to get them to pivot and learn something else when they already have those established habits are super challenging. But
Yeah.
kudos to you and Happy Valley for being ahead of the game and setting a precedence to this is how you should be shopping for cannabis and this is how you collect your data and how you make those informed decisions based off of your
Yeah.
experiences and that data that you're collecting. I absolutely love that. So you've already developed a really innovative app, customized app. You are, having increased customer retention and loyalty because of it. What else do you see in the cannabis industry that you think is a gap in either like technology or even how we operate and education? Like, what are your thoughts there on some missing pieces that we're missing in our industry right now?
Um, the obvious banking, but we already talked about that. I think every person would say that. I don't want to harp on it again, but I got to come back to the education
Mm-hmm.
because it's just so important, and that really is what is missing for so that people don't come in and ask for what do you got? That's 30%,
Mm-hmm.
THC. And if we get to that tipping point where you're always going to have people that are going to come in and ask that. But if we get to the tipping point of people saying, I really love myrcene or caryophyllene or linalool, I love the way that terpene tastes and the way it makes me feel. That's where we need to get to, because then we can sell a 15% THC Tangy. We have this cultivar called Tangy. That's a new, it's new for us. We do pheno hunts all the time, so we call them small batches. And I love it. I only got it 2 weeks ago, and it is the most flavorful smoke. It's not super high THC, but it's enjoyable, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what we want.
Right.
We just want to enjoy our experience. Our tagline is unlock your experience.
I love that.
So your experience that you want to unlock with the plant might be different than mine,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay. So I think our biggest gap is education and moving away from, not to harp on it too much, but the high THC and the terpene education.
Agreed. Yeah, I was in a Lyft the other day, and of course, when you're like in a Lyft or an Uber, they usually ask, "What do you do? What's your
Right.
business?" and whatnot. And of course, told him I'm in cannabis compliance, and he's like, he asked a question. He goes, "So, what's the difference between like cannabis and hash? Like, what are those two different things?" And of course, I just like popped off and started talking about like solvent extraction, ice and water extraction, rosin extraction, and just like
Right.
all these different things. But I had to like break it down and be like, okay, when you consume cannabis, you're consuming the plant material and those little crystals on there, those are called trichomes. And so hash is just actually the extracted trichomes. And how you extract that hash is different methods between ice and water, rosin,
Right.
and solvents and all of these things. Then I start talking about the effects. I'm like, for me personally, I don't smoke shatter or wax. I don't smoke things that have solvents in them because they're more of like an anxiety type of feeling for me, even if, pardon my terminology, even if the hash is indica, I still get like this anxiousness from it just because of how the hash was extracted. And so it turned into like a 30-40 minute conversation. And he was just like, wow, like you broke all of that down so nicely from like a beginner to advance and talked all through it. And I was like, well, yeah, this is what I had to do during my operation days. Like when I was overseeing operations and the company purchaser, I had to break all of this down for the bud tenders and provide that education and explain
Right.
like, okay, you have ice and water with full melt, but those are the little trichome heads that have cell walls around them, which are going to be a different potency than rosin because you're removing the cell walls from the rosin through heat and pressure when you're extracting that. And it's just like all these things people just like don't even know. And that's just about the extraction process. That's not even
Right.
about anything else. And so the education piece is just so critical, from everything that you did before starting with Happy Valley and educating doctors so that way they can educate their patients, to the consumers and the bud tenders that are interacting with the consumers, to even company purchasers and making sure they're putting the right products on the shelves. Like, there's this wide market for education that I really feel that there's a big enough sandbox. We can all play in it. And I really feel like if
Yeah.
people like niche down as specific as possible and really focus in an area and really talk about that education, I think we can go a really long way. And as research opens up, the more we learn. In previous episodes, I've geeked out about THCV and that new cannabinoid, and I'm so interested in THCV specifically because of the effects on the body is so different compared to other cannabinoids, where we're like, this is for sleep, this is for inflammation, this, like, all of these pain management, all of these other things, while THCV focuses on like blood sugar levels and suppressing your
Hmm.
appetite and things along that nature, that we just have so much to learn. And I'm really excited for the future, and especially for more research to just dive into that even more.
Yeah, and along the education tip, there's also product category education, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
Solventless, which is a great example, and how clean that is because you're not using any solvents. And for people that come from legacy black market, myself included, who really just ever bought flour, and now you have all these different product categories. There's tincture, there's edibles, there's solventless and batters and butters and all that stuff, and BHO, and they all have slightly different effects. I'm new to the solventless game primarily because I, I can't whip out a dab rig and a
For sure.
blowtorch. But I did get a pen that I can put, it's very discreet, and I can put some solventless butter in there and really get the flavor. And it's same cultivar, flour, and solvents, and you get a little bit of a different effect.
Hmm.
And I always had this sort of preconceived notion because of the dab rig and the blowtorch, and that you were dabbing, you're just gonna get, it's the pinnacle of highness, and you're just gonna get so high. It's not the case at all.
Right.
It's such a clean. I smoked a joint of 20% whatever, and been so high I gotta go in the shower. But like, the solventless is such a different clean high, and I think there's a little bit of a misconception that it's like we're going to be so whacked out if you do any solventless product, and it's not the case.
Hmm.
So there's this category education as well. If you're only, say, like I was, I always bought flour. So
Yeah, absolutely. And you even touched on hardware and like the devices that you're using to consume, because me
hmm
personally, I don't really like vape cartridges too much. I am a little skeeved out about like the heavy metals that could potentially leak into the vape cartridge. Here in Colorado, we just revamped our regulations that you actually have to test the vapor that's coming out of the vape cartridges now to make sure that
oh,
that the heavy metals aren't
that's
leaking,
interesting.
right? So to make sure heavy metals aren't leaking into the
Makes
cannabis
sense,
oil, and
right?
how long it's sitting there. People are notorious for leaving it into their cars in the summer. It heats
Right.
up, like all of those different types of things. And so for me personally, when I consume, I really love the hash pins that have like a ceramic bowl in them, and that's their heating element, rather than something with metal or like fiberglass or something like that, because if you inhale that, that could get into your lungs. So just to like
hmm
reharp on like education, like there are so many
Yeah,
different sectors that we really have to unpack further, dive really deep into, and provide really great education for our consumers.
totally agree.
Awesome. So, Greg, the future of cannabis. What are some of your thoughts? What are some of your wishes or hopes, whether for Happy Valley and your company, for Massachusetts, or federally? I know we talked about banking. Banking is always a big one that we need to open up. But if you had a genie in the bottle and had three wishes for the industry, what would those three wishes be?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. I think I would start with, the destigmatization, which is, as each state comes online with medical and then rec, and in our lifetime, I think we will see federal legalization, or at least 48 out of the 50 states,
Right.
legalize. And we incrementally take baby steps every time there's a new state that comes on board, and the finance people come in, and the tech people come in, and one of my wishes is continued, let's just say, getting rid of the destigmatization of cannabis. I would also like to see us as an industry be more thoughtful of the words that we use, because words are important. One thing that really bugged me when I was in Florida, is the Office of Medical Marijuana, or the MMTC, or, stop using the word marijuana. We don't need to get into where it comes from in the history and all that. You got, whoever's listening can Google that. But it's cannabis.
Yeah.
Right. They're not strains, they're cultivars.
Yes.
We say cultivar. We also don't say bud tender. We say host, because it's a little bit of an elevated word. A bud tender, it just has this, I don't know, to me, just a connotation to it. And you're trying to compare alcohol to cannabis and borrowing that from bartender, right? We don't need to do that. So just paying attention to our words and how we use, and those are the small ways we're going to be able to elevate the industry and educate the people who think 420 stoner, all that stuff. There's so many smart, educated people in this industry that are doing such great things. And most of us are daily consumers. I don't consume during the day. I consume in the evening, just like my wife, who wants a glass of wine. And there's many people. So the words are important in order to get us to destigmatization and use the right words and evolve our industry and our culture to be more mainstream. I mean, it already is mainstream. But everybody says, like, we're just at the infancy. But make no mistake, our industry will change when it's federally legal. And you've got big pharma and big tobacco and, all those lobbyists and everything that comes with that, and mergers and acquisitions. Whether that's a couple years or 5 years or 10 years away is anybody's question mark. I think the political landscape and who's president will have a lot to do with what happens with our industry, as it always does. So yeah, those are some of my wishes for the industry.
Yeah. And you touched on federal legalization and some big changes. I think this is a question I haven't asked any of my guests yet, but what do you think some of those big changes might be coming down the pipeline with federal legalization?
I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. It might open up banking finally, but like I said, Pfizer, pharmaceutical and big tobacco and alcohol. I mean, if you think that, I don't think they're called Philip Morris anymore, or Altria, or whatever who owns Marlboro. If you think they're not growing hemp somewhere in North Carolina or wherever they're in some giant indoor grow, they absolutely are. And they're just waiting so that they can do it. Same with pharma. So, I mean, I don't know what exactly those changes are going to be. I just know that things are going to be different.
Yeah, very different.
And there'll be a lot of people who started early on who are going to exit to those companies who have built brands and built products and innovated. There's so much room for innovation in our industry.
Agreed.
We're about to come out with a nano fast acting powder drink
Cool.
in a stick in about a month or two. And that's like a product innovation for us, and it's a product innovation for the industry. And we can continue to innovate with and borrow from other industries and apply it to, what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of room for innovation. But as far as federal legalization goes, I just know that things are going to be different once that does happen. On the one hand, it'll be good for some people. On the other hand, it'll change a lot of things.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah. A lot of consolidation probably. And, you know, um, the price point is always such a challenge. Like there's never any stability in our like price per pound or like right now in California, pounds are going for like $350 and not even,
Wow.
yeah. And like not able to make it. There's a lot of farmers that aren't even renewing their license and just like calling it a day pretty much because the entire market has crashed. And we saw it here in Colorado too. I mean, back in the day, I remember there was a time when we were getting $800 a pound, but for our indoor grow cost plus our excise, it was $710 cost of goods all in with excise. So we were only making $90 net profit
Mm-hmm.
for each pound sold. And the only thing that got our price per pound to go back up was new microbial test results or requirements were implemented, and everyone started failing those microbials, and we didn't have any market. So basic supply and demand, we didn't have a
Right.
lot of supply, demand went up, and so price per pound went up. And that was like the only thing that really saved us during that time. That was like 2016. And
Yeah.
you just see it over and over and over again in all of these industries. And so I feel like with federal legalization, there will be a lot of consolidation, a lot of like just price per pound just dropping. But that also opens up to for people like you with innovation and new products and really go after that craft consumer that truly cares about what they're putting into their
Mm-hmm.
body and what wants that education. And I think there's going to be a really big market for that.
I do think in every state there's always going to be a race to the bottom as cannabis gets commoditized, right?
Right.
And I also do think that it is the responsibility of the governing body in Massachusetts. It's the CCC who rolls out the regulations. Massachusetts was the first social equity state, and if they can do that, then the it's their responsibility to kind of maintain. I don't say maintain the pricing because they can't do that, but they can in a way by controlling the number of licenses, right? Because more supply means more licenses, which means more competition, which means the price comes down to a certain point. And to your point, but then the inverse happens is you licensed all these companies, but now they're only making $10 an eighth or whatever it is.
Right.
They have so little margin if you're not vertically integrated because you've got to buy wholesale, you've got to mark it up. You got 280E if you're not vertically integrated. You got so many things happening that the more licenses that are out there, yeah, it's a free market, but then the price comes down and then these companies go out of business
Mm-hmm.
because they can't compete because you just issued licenses in a 2 square mile. There's 50 dispensaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it really is. I think the regulatory agencies really need to pay attention to that,
Yeah.
and know the long term effects of the industry of doling out too many licenses.
Yep.
Really, in a finite area.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're seeing that in Oklahoma to like give a good use case on that specifically. Oklahoma didn't have a cap on licenses. I think they're trying to push through something through the legislator right now to put a moratorium on new licenses. But you could go to Oklahoma and get a license for $1,000. Like anyone
Wow.
could, yeah. And they had no cap, and it was really eye opening to see because I wouldn't say about 2 years ago, a lot of these not a lot, but there were accounts of these Oklahoma growers having problems with black mold in their cannabis and just like not knowing the proper way to grow. Maybe they were growing some other crop and then switched over to cannabis. And it's like, we never had this problem in California or Colorado. Like, yes, we had a problem with failing microbials, but not like black mold in our
Mm-hmm.
cannabis. And so it was just really interesting to see this true free market open up like Oklahoma, but then you don't have the quality product. The regulatory body also did not have good standards for testing or good oversight for that matter.
Yeah.
And now, actually, Thursday, they're implementing Metric. They all have to go live on Metric on Thursday. And now there's licenses that are like, nope, I'm handing in my license. I don't even want to deal with this. And so
Wow.
it's, yeah, right. And it's like, okay, yes,
They don't want to
Metric's
be compliant. They're out.
yeah, they're just like, I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with any of this. And it's like, okay, like suit
Wow.
yourself. But like, don't get me wrong, Metric has its own headaches. But at the same
Sure.
time, a positive with Metric is you get the data. You get to understand your business. Like you truly get to understand your cost of goods, return on investment, and it makes you a better business person because of that. And yeah, it's just been really interesting to see state to state, all the new markets, all the different strategies, open free market, $1,000 licenses, or putting a cap on things and kind of stabilizing the market. But then, the barrier to entry is then significantly harder for other people to get into that industry.
Yeah. And I think, if you're just going to get a dispensary license and raise a little bit of money and give it a go, you really have to go into it as if you're building a brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're building a
Agreed.
brand for your store, because after your first year, when people shop around, and I imagine it's like this in other parts of the country too, but in Massachusetts, it's a very, again, we're coming back to high THC. It's a high THC, high TAC, and price driven market. Only, and that's why we're doing things like our app and our technology and these concerts and really aligning ourselves this summer. We're calling it our summer of music. And we're doing something with local bands in Boston and the Levitate Festival and Boston Calling. And cannabis and music is such an easy connection to make.
Oh yeah.
And we're really trying to do that and build on that. And we're trying to build a brand and get people, to be brand loyal. In our East Boston location, it's our flagship store right across from the airport. We have a 36-foot by 14-foot LCD screen that plays content from our grow and just some like really immersive, cool stuff. And so we want to make our store an experience, right? You could go anywhere in Massachusetts and just buy an eighth and not care about your experience. Are you going there just because it's the lowest price, or are you going there because your host educated you and didn't rush you out, and because you felt comfortable in the store? Happy Valley, we're also different because we only sell Happy Valley products at our retail stores. So our stores are really a showcase for our own brand and our own branded products. And we also sell to about 90 different wholesalers across the state. So, it's a little bit of a different model. So we're doing things a little bit differently in hopes that people become brand loyal and they want to come to Happy Valley for their experience with the products, their experience with the store, with our hosts, with our technology, with all that stuff. So all of that, you can't just open up a store and, have the cheapest prices, carry 20 different brands of gummies, and because then you'll be out of business in a year.
Mm-hmm. And is that truly like the type of customer you want too? Like thinking about like your target audience,
Right.
like you might want more of that high end customer loyalty coming in and have no problem dropping $200, $250 like per transaction and things like that. So I did not realize that in your stores you only sell the products that you produce. That is fascinating. What other products are you all manufacturing? Of course, you have your cultivation, you have your manufacturing, you have your new products with your nano powder that you have coming out. What other products are in your stores?
We have a full solventless line that we just relaunched
Awesome.
maybe 3 or 4 months ago. We got batters and butters, and it's all and bubble hash. We make all of our own edibles in our own kitchen with our own distillate oil. Chocolates, we've got maybe 5 or 6 different flavors of chocolate: strawberries and cream and almond and milk and dark. And it's all higher end chocolate. Our gummies, we've got a slew of different flavors. We just launched vegan gummies.
Cool.
That have a little bit of a different texture and a bunch of different flavors. We have, of course, flour. We have pre-rolls. We have moon rockets, which is a joint with dry sift and bubble hash mixed in. Burns like really slow, and that's usually sometimes north of 30% THC. So that's a really great experience. We have flight packs and like a variety pack of 5 joints. So 5 either half gram or full gram joints. So you can, taste different, 5 different flavors in one pack. We also have a 7 pack that's pretty popular. That's all of the same cultivar. And it's in a tin, and you open it up, and it has matches in it and a little strike pad
cool.
in case you forget your lighter. And what else do we have? We pretty much have everything. There's only one. We also sell drinks. That's the only outlier where we have another brand that we bring in where we sell seltzer drinks, and that's only because we don't make drinks in our facility. It's like having a brewery, basically,
for sure.
in terms of what you need to do that. But that is the only product that we bring in that's not ours. But all the other cannabis products are Happy Valley, and that's all in our showroom at our stores.
I love that. That's so cool. Definitely going back to just the overall experience, from your tech stack to how you educate your customers to the products you're serving. It's a full experience, and I absolutely love that. And to the point on drinks are hard. I mean, even just looking at how people dose drinks, like, do you do 100 milligrams? Do you do 10 milligrams? There's a company that started in California, and I think they're in other states now, called Can. And and they have like the little 6-pack, which when I first saw that in California, I was just like, this is awesome. I love the little like 2 milligram THC to CBD, and a little 6-pack that you can just take with you. So innovative. So that's great. And I just love all of the different things that you all are doing, from, again, your technology through your customer experience, and just really putting innovation at the forefront and really making sure that your customers have a great experience.
Yeah.
That's great. So, Gregg, thank you so much for taking the time today. Where can people get a hold of you and Happy Valley?
You can check out our website, happyvalley.org. And if you'd like to email me, feel free. My email is Gregg, Gregg, at happyvalley.org.
Love it. Thank you again for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Oh, yeah, of course. And congratulations on all the success. I cannot wait to come out to Massachusetts and visit your stores.
Anytime.